And welcome to the Confound Millennial, starring Steven Stirvin Michaels and featuring special guest Benjamin Langford-Biss of Bleak Soul.
I know the skill and stay insane, but I hear the thunder before I feel the rain. There's a void in the window of time, just wanted to live and then wanted to die. Oh, I lost my way now. I hate myself now.
Hey Ben, how's it going?
How are we doing? Thank you for having me.
We're doing good. Just glad to have you on, man. It's been a little bit of back and forth, but we're finally got you on, and I'm excited,
here.
man. It's going to be a good episode.
Me too. Yeah.
So,
How have you been?
To start out, I like to ask the hardest question first because I butcher saying who people are. So, who are you?
I am Ben Langford-Biss from Bleak Soul, but a lot of people also know me because I used to be in a band called As It Is. So that is who I am to the people, not who I am as a grander question, because that I'm still unsure on.
I feel that. I really do. It's like
I think not to name drop, but I feel like it's definitely a millennial thing. So
yeah, I don't think any of us know what we are. We'll figure it out about 70, 75, something like that, maybe.
yeah, I don't think there's any hope until then, quite honestly.
So, you're a musician, singer. How did your music career start?
Well, I've been playing in bands since I was, 13. My first band was in a thrash metal band. I was the drummer,
Ooh.
believe it or not. We were super like Pantera inspired. We thought we were super edgy. But I grew up in Cornwall, and it's a bit, there's no music scene there at all. It's just in the far corner. Bands never come and play there. Just a real kind of small town vibes. And so I really wanted to get out. And so I went to university in Brighton. And along the way, I'd always kind of just recorded music myself. And so I did a music degree, and that's where I met Patty. And honestly, that As It Is were the first band that I formed after leaving home. And it kind of just took off. And yeah, because I know a lot of people, they'd be like, make it, and they're like fourth, fifth band that they've been in, but kind of hit it lucky, kind of first real try that I gave it, as opposed to just like bands that I was in as a teenager.
So you mentioned playing the drums. How many musical instruments do you play?
I play drums, I play guitar, I play piano to a point. I'd like to point out I'm not a shredder on any of these. I'm a classic like jack of all trades, master of none kind of vibe. So yeah, I play those three. I can play bass as well. I play bass on my recordings. And again, I sing to a degree. So yeah, I'm not an incredible player on all of them, but I like being able to I like having versatility, and I much prefer writing on the piano than I do on any other instrument. So it just feels like the most natural for me. I feel like I understand it, even though I've been a guitarist in a band. I feel like I understand it better than the guitar. So yeah, I'd love to first first instrument I tried to play was actually the French horn, but I never caught on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my first instrument that lasted all of 2 months was the violin, and I didn't touch
Yeah.
another instrument for 10 years.
See, the violin, I had a stint trying it as well. It's one of those ones where it's like it sounds horrendous until you actually get good. Like it's not like the guitar where you can learn like a couple of chords and you can sound all right. Like the violin is just notoriously bad sounding at the beginning of your learning experience.
It's like you
So
gotta hit
it's
expert.
not good for parents.
Right. It's kind of like, I mean, classically, they joke about drums being that way too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I had my first instrument, proper one that I actually gave it a go and bought one of was drums. But I grew up living in a hotel as well for a bit, so I had to have like one of those like tabletop little electric drum kits, and that's how I first learned because I couldn't have a drum kit in a hotel for obvious reasons.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, so when you started out as it is with Patty back in the day, or you mentioned before then, Pantera was kind of the sound you were going for. What changed between then and as it is in your music tastes or inspirations?
A lot. I think I definitely, it's one thing I hate now, but I at the age of 13, 14, I probably was a bit of a like edgy gatekeeper, like kind of thought I was really cool. I only listen to metal, right? Like and do you know what? It was like before that, I had gotten into music really through kind of the usual ones: Green Day, Nirvana. Um, I liked all those bands before, and then I became a teenager that was like, I only listen to heavy music now, and all of this stuff is not cool. Um, and then I actually, one of the first albums that kind of brought me back out of like my metal phase and getting more into just the general alternative scene was Infinity on High by Fall Out Boy. That again, I loved From Under the Cork Tree, and then in between those two records, I was like just metal, and then it kind of, because it was pushing at the time, it was pushing those boundaries between the alternative scene and the pop world, and I think because everyone was, calling them sellouts or whatever, it was that kind of era of it. And I was like, do you know what? No, this is cool. Like, and that was my fundamental, like, it's when I started being like, oh no, I don't believe in like necessarily the term selling out as a concept. And then since then, I've always been just very open. I got into around that time Elliott Smith, who's my favorite songwriter of all time. And my family's been fundamental in my music taste. I've always grown up with like, my dad's a massive Bowie fan, so that was always playing, and Annie Lennox. And I think once I got out of the snobby teenager mode, I managed to open my eyes, and I was just influences from everywhere. And I'm really grateful for having that. I remember my uncle gave me for my birthday one year like every Nick Cave album, and that unleashed something else as well. So
it's funny that you mentioned the metal gatekeeper, because well, growing up for me, I was force-fed contemporary Christian music and nothing else until I was 14 or 15. And then I dove head first into metal. It was all metal all the time. Nothing else was cool. And then
Was it
Some
bridged with like Christian metal? Was that like?
Oh, Skillet was the gateway there, and then a little bit of As I Lay Dying, but it
Yeah,
quickly went from them to just everything else. Because Christian metal is a lot like Christian rap. Like you got to be really, really good at it.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I don't think, living in the UK, we don't have quite as big a market for like any kind of, you have Christian country music, and that's big. And I mean, even bloody all of the latest Justin Bieber singles are all kind of quite God heavy
we
of
got
late.
Kanye on now. I mean, Kanye's
Kanye.
on it. But especially
Yeah, that stuff doesn't make it over here.
being in the Bible Belt where I grew up, it was like that. But then I was a metal gatekeeper, like you said, for a while. And then I had a girlfriend drag me to a Mayday Parade concert. And there was something about that night. I never listened to Mayday Parade much anymore, but the bands that opened, As It Is, This Wildlife, and Real Friends are on my daily uh, playlists.
That was a great tour. That was actually probably to this day still one of my favorite tours that we ever did. Was that one? And yeah, Mayday Parade were another one of those bands that kind of got me out of that mindset, much like yourself. So yeah, it was a very kind of full circle-y moment being on that tour. And so I think we discussed this in email. You saw us at the old Masquerade, right? That
Right.
was, which I love that venue. I remember that I'd never ever felt such charm from a venue turning up there before. Like it's like it was run down. It was kind of grotty. Like I didn't trust all our expensive equipment in that lift. Um,
You don't
that's just a
trust the
chain
ground you're
that
standing
hoists it
on.
up. No. And I think, we even saw like mice running around backstage. So, but there was something about it I just like loved. So, yeah, it was a great tour. Glad you got to see us on that. I mean, we were probably not even that good. We were still quite fresh then. We hadn't been touring that long, and we were
You
just
you
kind of
guys were my
winging it.
favorite band of that night. For sure. Because the thing is, when I hadn't heard of any of y'all except for Mayday Parade before we went. And no offense to the other bands because they're very good, but you guys both put on a great live show. And then the music that you had recorded at the time reflected that. Where at the time, Real Friends, they put on a hell of a show and they're great recorded now, but at the time it didn't really, what they played wasn't exactly the
Yeah,
recorded, but you guys had
yeah,
it
that
on
makes
both
sense.
fronts. And I loved it. And I'm really glad that I got dragged to that show. And I'm
Same.
probably the one of the oldest fanboys of.
I don't know. I reckon my dad probably gets that title. So,
Well,
yeah,
that's good.
he's always been so supportive, and he flies out to random places. He came out to see us on Warped Tour and kind of road tripped around with my sister. But yeah, that tour was an interesting tour because that was, I think it is one of the only tours, what's the only US tour we've done where we had zero crew. So we were driving ourselves, we were doing merch, we were doing everything ourselves. So we were just splitting all the driving. So I think because of that, when it came time to, we were playing our 25 minutes or however long we got opening, it was like we put our all into that because we'd all just spent the whole day fucking so tired driving and not having anyone to like share the burden with or help us. So,
And we're going to talk about Bleak Soul more in a little bit, but I'm not going to have you reliving as it is the whole time. But I did want to thank you for one other show you did that I saw. It was the first time that I met the guys in Capstan. If
yes,
you remember them. And they were the first guests we had on the show. I owe where I'm at with the podcast to them, and they do not fit in with you guys on a show, but
no, no, we've always had this attitude of just like we liked their band. It didn't necessarily make sense because I mean, next time around we had our main support was like Sharptooth. Definitely didn't make any sense. But we're always just we like the bands that we like, and we like diverse bills as well. There's nothing I hate more than going to a show and seeing 5 of the same band. Like I'd much rather see like an eclectic array of different kinds of bands. So yeah, I love those guys. So it was great to have them on that, and we got to do Warped Tour again with them. So that has been probably the hardest part of the pandemic, or just not being in as it is not seeing, I'd run into those people at least a couple of times a year because I'd be in various different places, even if we weren't touring together. We'd come out to each other's shows, and all these kind of friends that you make along the way, like no one's seen because they're all in countries all over the place. So,
right.
But yeah, I love that tour as well. I think that was our first ever headline tour of the US. I think. If memory serves me right.
Yeah, I went and I saw the little acoustic pre-show you did and everything, and it was a great time. But we talked about the Masquerade for a second, and that's probably the most dangerous venue you've played at. But what's like the weirdest venue you've played at? Because not a lot of people are aware there's some weird venues. I've been to a concert inside an actual deli.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I would say similar one. One of our first European tours, we played like this kind of really in the suburbs kind of cafe in France. It was like a brasserie, and it was like in their kind of wine cellar. And actually on that tour, we did play a wine cellar in Prague as well. I don't know why that was like the tour of wine cellars. But yeah, that was a similar kind of vibe to what I imagine a show in a deli would be.
It was wild. Like
we've played some like, yeah. Who did you see there? Because I know that Chaim did a tour of delis as well.
Lauren Babick.
Oh yeah,
Red-Handed Denial.
Yeah. Oh wow.
It was her and a bunch of other metal bands, and there was this one guy, I don't know if you've heard of Left to Suffer. It's an Atlanta-based band, but they're starting to blow up now. But he gets up there and he's like, "All right, I want all you motherfuckers to tear this place to fucking pieces. Not really. Go get you a sandwich, but still tear it down."
Oh, that's so funny. Like, yeah, I've seen a show in a I guess you call them a laundromat in America. I've seen a show just down the road from where I live in Brighton. They when they do like what our version of like South by Southwest is, we have this thing called Great Escape, so all the venues in the city participate, but sometimes things that aren't venues also participates, like a laundrette. So yeah, but we've played some really grotty places in our time. I'm trying to think of like weird ones. I mean, I do think one of the weirdest venues that we play in America, and we've played there a few times, is the loading dock in Salt Lake City. It's that kind of, it's just a shipping container and it's outside, and you end up playing Salt Lake City in January and you're playing outside, and I'm like literally in like 4 layers because it's freezing.
I've actually heard of that.
And yeah, I actually managed to, I played guitar on the roof of the shipping container last time I was there because I had to run around and warm myself up because there's no real backstage. It is literally just a shipping container, and we're just like, how? At that point, we're like, how do we fit everything on? And the stage is just like pallets as well. So
it's wild,
but always a good vibe show. But yeah, just I don't know why you'd book an outdoor show in Salt Lake City in January.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Not great. No. And that's also really weird for like the system, because you'll do that and then like literally the next day you'll be in California, like, or Vegas or whatever, and it's just you're like, you've been playing a freezing show the next day, and then the next day you can't even wear a coat. So
I couldn't imagine that part of touring. You know, it shocked my system just moving from Georgia to Kentucky and getting used to that. I couldn't imagine going from just one end of the globe to the other the next day and constantly doing that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like I remember the first US tour we ever did was our friends in Rome, and there were 13 of us in a van, in one van, and we got stuck in a snowstorm in Nashville in March, and we were like, what? We weren't expecting this. And then, you know, 2 days later, you're just like, you're in the heat and it's unbearable, or you've driven all the way to Arizona and you can barely exist. So I don't know how anyone lives in Arizona, if I'm completely honest. Lovely place, great bars, but how do people live there? That's what I want to know. Like, too hot, not designed for humans.
I don't trust people from Arizona. I have an ex from Arizona. I don't trust them. They're a hardier people, but
yeah, it's like you get the two ends of the hardiness in America, right? Though, because you get the kind of Chicago hardy, where it's like the brutal winter hardy, and then you get the people that are in Arizona, where it's, or like Southern California, where it's just hot all the time, like too hot to not be in air conditioning and just walk outside. It's just yeah, so you really just balance the extremes. We just have kind of a generic miserable all the time vibe. So it's just a slightly brighter shade of miserable.
But it's another thing about, you know, America that's a little different is, you know, you had mentioned, and I get it, you know, you have toured a lot, so you've seen a lot of different bands, you've met a lot of different people. But in America, a lot of the time, these bands I talk to, you know, their friends are all in the same scene from the same area. And, you know, you mentioned from other countries, you know, for you, it's probably just a couple-hour drive to another country, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
our cities are super close together in the UK. And yeah, I could be in France in, I don't know, an hour and a half. I could be in Germany in 2.5 hours, probably. Like if I left right now. Even the flights so quick. So but you know, I could drive it. We've got the old Eurotunnel, so I can go and just drive under the sea towards Europe. Not as freely as I used to be able to because of the old Brexit, but yeah, still can go, and it's nice. I think that's, again, that is a big cultural difference, and I think the difference between how like local scenes erupt in America versus how they work here is it seems to be about like, you make a splash in like your state, right? Or I guess it starts in your town and then the state. But I guess the easier thing about the UK is there's nowhere that's not too far from a major city. Unlike in America, where if you get like some kids in a band that are growing up in the middle of nowhere, I don't know, Arizona or Kentucky, right? It's hard to get to a main city, right, to play a show. Like,
I was about to say, like, we've got concerts starting to come back at the end of the year here, and this is my first year being in Kentucky, and I'm like, oh crap, yeah, nobody plays here. Where do I go?
Yeah, I don't think we've ever played in Kentucky.
There's nothing here to play for, so. But
yeah, I'm just thinking about that. Yes, that's one of the states I don't think we've ever been to. Might have driven through it, but yeah, never played. And I mean, you take, if you live in middle of nowhere, Texas, I mean, what it takes, like, I mean, our whole country is the size of Florida,
yeah,
so and you can hit out a tour where you do 11 major cities in 2 weeks.
It's like
and you've done the whole country.
My move took 8 hours.
Yeah,
3 states.
I remember the longest drive we ever did was we did either Vegas or like Reno to San Antonio, and it took us 36 hours in one go. So yeah, that was one of the brutal ones.
So we've been talking a lot about touring, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but touring is the reason that you ended up leaving the band, is it not?
Ironically, yeah. Yeah, it was primarily to do with that. It was that particularly that year we had some like really, really long stretches, and I felt a little kind of out of control, because as much as we can be like, we want to take this time off, it doesn't always work like that, because in the case of that, a band will offer you a tour and you can't really turn it down. It's like a great opportunity. So then that eats into your time off. And I felt, I'd done 5 years of 150 to 200 shows a year, every year. And at a certain point, it was starting to kind of, it was all becoming a bit of like a blur. Like all the days were kind of just merging into one. And I needed it. I think I needed a proper break from it. Yeah. And then I left because of touring, and then touring stopped. So that's the irony of it all. It's good in a way, because now I'm in the process of booking a tour for Bleak Soul.
Okay.
And it's nice to just like purely be able to just like look forward to it, in both a kind of like blind optimism, is it going to happen because of the pandemic kind of way, and also just, sometimes I'd be at home between tours for less than 24 hours. So it wasn't like I was looking forward to going out on the next tour. I was like, it was just a day at home, and I'd stopped looking forward to the next thing, because it was just too much of it. So yeah, I definitely needed that kind of reset.
And when starting Bleak Soul, did you have any plans on when you left As It Is to start something else, or was it after the break you were like, you know what, I've been making music most of my life. I can't not keep making music.
Yeah, I always knew that I wouldn't stop making music. I didn't at the time. I didn't know whether I'd like put it out. Um, at the time of leaving, I've always before the band, I had various solo projects. They're basically just like names I gave myself and I what I recorded, but I never put anything out. I was always kind of um, I was still kind of learning, and I wasn't ready to put any of it out at that point. So doing music on my own has always been something that I've done, and it became, I think, it became quite important to me that to put something out that was just 100% me. When I started writing those songs, they were just kind of, I was writing them for fun, for me. But in the same way that I'm not a big like life sharer on social media. I'm quite like private about. I only really use it when I have any music to promote or anything. I'm not big on that kind of um, front. And I but this is something where I feel comfortable sharing because I've kind of skewed it, and yeah, I might be telling stories about my life, but I'm telling them in a slightly more ambiguous way, or plastered them with metaphors that mean I'm a bit more kind of comfortable sharing them. So, and ultimately, just to kind of get over my fear. I feel like I've basically spent 15 years putting off anything that I've just solely created on my own out into the world. So there's definitely time.
Well, I gotta tell you, man, I'm loving what I've heard so far of Bleak Soul, and I've had "Why Am I Here" stuck in my head since I heard it for the first time.
Thank you. That's that means a lot. I've been uh, what the guitar part and the synth part for that song is what I settled on. I've been rewriting that for, and it's so simple, but you know, it's one of those ideas that I literally had for 10 years, but then was just like changing it, and then I'd overcomplicate it, and then I'd strip it all the way back, and then it was just one of those ones that I never committed to any final version of until then. So
So with Bleak Soul, you write all of it?
yeah, 100% of it. I produced it. I mixed all of that record as well. I got a friend to mix "Learning to Cope with Nihilism," my most recent track, but the next album will be produced, mixed by me, and I might get a couple of kind of people to play a few extra instruments on things, but that's kind of the vibe that I like. Like I'll write everything, and then I just kind of people want to play some parts, so it's not just all um, you know MIDI strings or whatever I decide to throw in that day, some horns. So I was, especially with the vibe of what's next, I think it's very important that it's all kind of pretty real.
But that's super talented, man. I have zero musical talent. I've tried and tried, just to write a simple song on a guitar, and like I can't imagine doing an entire album or EP or whatever, just starting in here and making it happen.
I do quite often find myself thinking that I'm just like, where does music come from? I like I still don't completely understand it. It'll be like I'll start the day with nothing, and then halfway through the day I'll still have nothing, and then by the end of the day sometimes I can have, I have something that I'm really happy with, and I'm just like, where did that come from? Like how, as it can be from like nothing, like, and just suddenly you've simplest of things. It can just be one line or something, and then that's it. I've got it, and I've had quite a good spree with writing recently. I go through, as most I'm sure writers do, you go through creative droughts and stuff, and I went through one a bit at the end of last year, and this year I've been everything's kind of, I don't know, flowed out of me a lot easier. So and because I think it's again existential meditation. It was like still what they say about like your first records, where it's like, oh, you kind of have your whole life. And as much as it was like, it wasn't my first record technically because I'd done a bunch, it was still all these ideas that I'd amassed over 15 years of playing, and things that I wrote that, I don't know, didn't get used in As It Is or whatever it is, that I still like believed in. I was like still saw potential in. Those went into that, and then after that, I was like, wow, I'm really starting from scratch now. After existential meditation, it's like I have literally clean slate to try and start from. So yeah, that was kind of daunting at the beginning, but I've pushed past that now.
That was actually my next question is, what's it like starting over from scratch? What you're doing now is definitely a big change from As It Is, even though my old roommate from rehab still labels it the same genre. He labels all this kind of music one genre. He calls it sad boy shit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm always going to fit into that category. If someone sees it as that,
I just,
yeah,
it's still like, it's very different from As It Is, except for in the way that it's still got this raw emotion as a part of it. And I think that is probably the best thing that you've got going with it, is just it's real music.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think, yeah, that is something I'm definitely going to be harnessing more with my next release. I think I still, with existential meditation, I still was kind of, because it was my first release, like being fully in control of everything and writing 100% of it. It was still kind of a lot of experimenting and a lot of seeing what works. And I've, as I was with As It Is, and as I will be with this, I'm also a firm believer in like never releasing the same album twice. So the next one is going to be, again, vastly different. And I'm really excited for that. I think it might throw a few people off, but that's part of the fun. I'm just being me. So that's kind of all that matters to me. If I write a heavy song or a grunge song, or I write acoustic ambient stuff, it all comes from me. And I think that's the beauty of having this kind of pseudonym to go under, and it all exists as me, however different it is.
And that's it's beautiful in a way that to be able to just do, like, the way that I relate to it is I'm a podcaster, but I talk, I have you on the show right now. Next episode I'm going to be talking about Magic the Gathering.
Nice.
And then later down the road, I'm going to talk about mental health, and then I'm going to have another band on. It's just, even though it doesn't mix, it's these three things that are important to me, and that's all that matters with your music too. Is as long as it's important to you and it is you're putting out
Yeah.
the realest content that you can, and that's great.
100%. That's all my mission with this was. Even before the pandemic hit, I didn't know that whether I was going to ever like tour it or play shows. I kind of wanted to take it a bit back to what made me fall in love with music in the first place, which was just at the time was just playing different instruments alone in my room. And I kind of wanted to kind of refine that spark. And that's been so good to do with this.
So you're talking about doing a tour, you're talking about a new album. Any other plans you got coming up for Bleak Soul that we need to be on the lookout for?
No, so at the moment, I have got I've just put out a new single, and then next week I'm kind of announcing the project that's part of, and that's separate from my next album. These are just kind of a couple of kind of detour singles, and yeah, then it will be working out when I put out the next album. I hate sitting on things, so I imagine I'll probably just kind of put it out one day. It'll just appear. I think that's one of the things that I like about this as well, is not having to play the whole, I have to do like a 4-month album rollout and release a bunch of singles, especially with this album. It's an album. It's like start to finish. It's kind of written like a soundtrack, as opposed to how I'd write a conventional album. I tried to write it a bit more like that because I listen to a lot of soundtracks, and so there aren't necessarily like singles. So I imagine that will probably be the way that I kind of go about doing Bleak Soul, is just releasing some singles or small EPs or whatever, and then kind of also doing these kind of weird, I'm going to use the term, I don't like the term, but like kind of self-indulgent like records. But I'm a bit of a believer that art should be to a degree self-indulgent. It's like, if you're not fully believing in what you're doing, what's kind of the point? So whether people like it or not, because it might be too different, that's fine with me, because what I love about artists in general is just evolution. There aren't many artists, even like some of my favorite ones, that I love every single record of. Like, there's a few, but it's rare. So I think that's just the beauty of the journey. But yeah, I'd love to like make it over to America at some point. I really want to. I really want to come and like make more than tour there. I really want to just come and like live in the middle of nowhere and make a record for a month in America. So
hey, bumfuck middle of nowhere, Kentucky. I'll make a record.
Yeah, I'm down wherever, to be honest. Like I miss America, and I miss, because every As It Is album we ever did was made out in America, and I do miss that part of it, of like,
I didn't know
just that. Yeah, every single one did. Never Happy we did in Florida, then we did Okay in LA, and then we were in the middle of nowhere, Texas. We were just outside of Austin, kind of hill country Texas during the Great Depression. So I miss that, because at the moment I like is work and play in my studio at the moment, which is just my room. So there's something to be said for that escapism of like going into a new environment to create something.
Right. So, last question here is where do we go to support you? Merch, buy your music, what do we do?
So people can head to bleaksoul.bandcamp.com. I feel like Bandcamp is probably the most direct way for people to support me. You can find me on Spotify and Apple Music if that is your thing. And yeah, if you want to buy any merch, bleaksoul.limitedrun.com, and I will ship it personally from right here to you. Yeah, and well, I'm not Bleak Soul on socials. I'm Ben Langford-Biss on socials. So if people want to follow me, I don't know why they would, because I don't really post that much because I'm quite private, but they will find my music there at least. I'm also not very good at selling myself, clearly. Head to my Instagram. There's nothing there.
All right. Any last things you'd like to say? Anything to the fans, or love you, fuck you, something?
I just thank you for continuing to support me. After leaving your favorite band, so cheers, appreciate that. Yeah, I hope to see people soon. I think is the main thing. Have some in-person connections with these people. That would be nice. And thank you also for having me and for coming to see us and supporting us as well.
Thank you for coming on, man. And as always, stay saucy, y'all. This has been the Confound Millennial, starring Steven Stirvin Michaels and Benjamin Langford-Biss of Bleak Soul.